Okay. Last week we took Israel through the Red Sea, and they had quite a praise and worship service after they got through. And they're heading now for Mount Sinai, and they're in the wilderness of Sinai. And there's actually 17 different ideas on where Mount Sinai is. And several of them have some history and archaeology behind it. My personal belief is that it's around this area right here. Paul said that Sinai was in Arabia, and this is the Arabian Peninsula here. So it needs to be over here to make Paul right. I assume Paul knew better than we do where it was. And there is a mountain right here that is named Jabal al-Las, which in English is Mountain of the Law. And the locals call it Jabal al-Mus, which means that's Moses' mountain. So I kind of think that's probably where Sinai is. That's probably where the mountain is. There is a lot of evidence of a large group of people camping there for quite some time. And in such a dry desert region, there wouldn't be a lot of decay and stuff, and artifacts could last thousands of years. This would be about 3,500 years ago. But because there is so little rain, things don't decay much when there's no rain, and when it's so dry. But anyway, they're not quite to Sinai yet. They traveled for 3 days, and they arrived. They ran out of water. They hadn't run across water to refill their things. They were thirsty. They arrived at a place that had water, and that's great, right? But the water was bitter. So they named it Mara because that means bitter. So I went over there to Bitter Street, and that's what they named it. And they started complaining. Now these were the people that had just walked through the Strait of Aqaba with the water up on the sides on dry ground, and then watched the army drowned behind them where they had just walked safely through. 3 days later, they're complaining. And they're griping, and you brought us out here just to kill us. We're just going to die because this water isn't any good. Why'd you do this to us? You should have just left us in Egypt. Memorize that because they repeat it frequently. Sometimes I think God chose Israel to be his people because they were such a complaining people, and he wanted to prove how much he loved us no matter how bad we are. Anyway, God spoke to Moses. Moses saw a piece of wood laying nearby, and God said, pick that up and throw it in the water. So Moses picked it up and he threw it in the water, and the water became sweet. Sweet as in, it wasn't bitter anymore. It was perfectly good water, and they could drink, and they didn't die of dehydration. So God provided for them. Well, it wasn't enough. They began to complain, God, we're going to starve to death. We don't have enough food, and Moses, you should have just left us back in Egypt, where we had plenty of food, and evidently in Egypt they had big pots that they would put in town squares, that they put fire underneath, so the pot was boiling, and they just keep meat cooking in it all the time, so anybody who was hungry could come and fish the meat out and eat. And so they missed that. They missed their big meat pots, where they could get food anytime they wanted, and et cetera, et cetera. And God said, okay, I'm going to take care of it. In the morning, you will go outside and you will find food. But don't be greedy, only collect enough for 1 day. Except, if it's Friday, collect enough for 2 days. Because I don't want you to go out on Saturday to collect. So they went out the next morning, and there was, the Bible describes it that it was small like a coriander seed, and coriander's tiny little seed, and it was white, and when they tasted it, it tasted like crackers made with honey. So it was slightly sweet, and they gathered it up, and those who were handicapped and couldn't do a lot of gathering, they gathered an omer's worth. And those who were robust and could gather, gathered an omer's worth. There were a few people who were greedy and they gathered more and tried to save it overnight to make sure they would have food the next day. But when they woke up in the morning, it was all full of worms, so they couldn't eat it. God got mad at them for that. Friday came, and everyone, no matter whether they were a small child or they were slow or whatever, or healthy and vigorous, everyone gathered 2 omers. And Aaron came to Moses and said, they've gathered twice as much. This doesn't make sense. And Moses said, it's what they're supposed to do. God said to, don't worry about it. And in the morning, that omer that was left that they hadn't eaten the day before, it was fine. Omer is, by the way, unit of measure. It held 1 day's worth of food for the people. In this way, God provided for them, and he in fact would provide for them in this way until they get into Canaan's land, which will be 40 years from now. But he provided for them so they didn't starve to death, so that they were fine. For that whole time, for years and years and years. 6 days a week, their food was there. The 6th day, there was 2 days worth, and it was fine for the 7th day, and then started all over for the next week. For the whole time, he took care of them in this way. And it's our same God that takes care of us, no matter what. So let's sing our song. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Won't let Satan put it out. I'm gonna let it shine. Won't let Satan put it out. I'm gonna let it shine. Won't let Satan put it out. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Hide it under a bush, oh no. I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bush, oh no. I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bush, oh no.